Razormouth for Trump the Media. Glad to be back. So, what's the deal with the Supreme Court? If you've been wondering, like me, I mean, you hear all about this major case, the one case, the case that's got the most, shall we say, oomph. It has potential election result changing ramifications, to use layman's language. So what's the deal with the Supreme Court? I'm wondering, because aren't they suspiciously silent? I mean, the Texas lawsuit was filed at the turn of the week, and it's Friday already, and we've heard virtually nothing. I have my suspicions, and I'm going to share them with you in a moment. Now, listen, some of you have written me wondering, how come we don't see more of you, and really want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate the feedback and the comments that I'm getting from you. I'm getting to know so many people right across this great country, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Just so you know, I don't do this for a living. I don't do this full time. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. And besides, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm one of these people that, like there are people I follow just like you, and you're following me, I guess. You're at Trump the Media. But I don't know. I'm one of these people that's a little leery about a person that always has something to say all the time, every day, constantly. Now, I know there's some really great, Rush Limbaugh comes to mind. I'm a big fan of his. I've been following him since the late 80s, early 90s. So it's well over 30 years. And even I get tired of listening to Rush sometimes. And I don't always, this goes without saying, because we're all independent. I don't always agree with him, not so much in principle, but some of his sentiments. I really get tired of the fact that he doesn't give it to the Republicans the way I think he should. He tends to be far too he defers to them a little too much. And his constant bringing up the hypocrisy of the liberal left media. We know that, right? We know that. It's just, anyways, that's just me. But of course he does that for a living, and that's how he's become well known. And we love him for it anyways. I still love the guy. I listen to him as often as I can, and I'm praying for his health. So you've got guys like that, but there's just a plethora of people that are trying to make a living being talking heads, and so I wanted to be clear. I'm not trying to make a living as a talking head. I don't always think I have something of value to say all the time. In fact, often. The only reason I'm doing this is because it's a cathartic exercise for me, right? I'm the guy that would sit there at the TV and watch Fox News and get really angry and want to throw things at my TV. I know, so pathetic. I'm only hurting myself, but I get really upset. And it was a friend that basically said, "Hey, if you want to work out your frustration, just share it with people." And okay. So I did it. I did find it helped me a little bit. It got me to pretty well stop watching Fox. But I find them doing this now on Newsmax. Much better, yes. But even there, there's some personalities that sometimes get on my nerves. I guess that's just the kind of guy I am. So I don't want to be one of these people that constantly, every day, gets on this platform and puts out a video because I think that I have something that's so earth-shattering and revelatory that you need to hear it. And for those people that have commented about how I just like to hear myself talk, no. But if you don't like listening to me, then just do yourself and myself a favor and move along. I'm not interested in what you think about me. And whether I bob around too much, like one person criticized me saying, "When can't you sit still? You got ants in your pants." Of all the criticisms, I got ants in my pants. And in fact, I've been quite private about who I am. Not because I'm a coward. It's just this is online, and there are so many wackos out there, so many people that want to do harm Trump supporters that I've been quite careful about not revealing my identity, but I'm going to kind of go back on that and reveal a little bit about my identity and let you know that what I really do for a living is I'm an entertainer, and I built a business around entertaining seniors in retirement homes. And I go and I sing the great American standards. Been doing this for years and loved it. Got to do what I love to do more than anything else, which is sing and bring joy to people in the senior community and sing the great American standards, which is still great music. But, COVID hit and it completely wiped out my business. So now I spend the bulk of my time twiddling my thumbs and praying that, some sense of normality will come back so I can get back to doing what I love to do. What I love to do is share my talent as a singer. Listen, I don't do this to make an income. And I certainly don't really ask you to support. There is an ability to support if you're so inclined. But I'm going to ask you this. I am an entertainer, a singer, and a recording artist. And, there's a way you can support me with it doesn't really cost you any money. And it's just watch my videos, listen to my music on the various streaming platforms. If you got a Spotify account, it doesn't cost you any more. In fact, you can listen to me on Spotify without having a Spotify account. You just have to put up with the commercials. You can listen to me on YouTube Music, which is free. Or if you are so inclined and you like it so much, download my albums at Apple Music or all these other streaming services. I'm going to leave the link to my music on this video in the description segment, and I'm just going to ask you, because it really doesn't cost. If you like what I do and you like hearing me talk about these things, give my music a gander. Take a listen to it. It may not be your style. Cool, I get it. But it doesn't really cost you anything. Listen to my music and let me know what you think. And that's one way you can support me, because Spotify and all these various companies do pay a smidgen for every time my music gets streamed. And, it'll be a way that I can earn a little bit of living while I'm twiddling my thumbs waiting for normality to get back in. So I'm an entertainer. I sing for the retirement community, but I'm also a recording artist. I'm going to leave you the links. There's lots of music. It's modern pop music. So interestingly enough, while I spend the bulk of my time singing the American standards, my own music is more pop. It's an EDM style, although there's also a lot of Christian contemporary stuff that I've written. And in fact, this song right here, Made in the Image, is a new song that I've released. And I'm really excited about it. So I just encourage you to go listen to it. Made in the Image, and it's a song that I've written and I sing as well. And hey, I appreciate your support, okay? So let's get back to the point. What is the deal with the Supreme Court? And I'm going to read this little excerpt from CBS News. 106 House Republicans back Texas challenge of the election results at the Supreme Court. That's encouraging. Let me just read this here for you. A Republican congressional ally of President Trump solicited more than 100 of his fellow GOP lawmakers to sign onto a brief with the Supreme Court in support of a long-shot lawsuit filed by Texas seeking to delay certification of presidential electors in 4 battleground states won by President-elect Joe Biden, which he is not, but obviously you understand the bias of CBS News. Congressman Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, circulated an email obtained by CBS News, from his personal account to GOP members Wednesday that asked them to join a friend of the court brief to be filed in support of the efforts spearheaded by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Johnson was a vocal defender of Mr. Trump during impeachment proceedings. Quote, The simple objective of our brief is to affirm for the court and our constituents back home, and that's important, our serious concern with the integrity of our election system. Well, that goes without saying, Mr. Johnson. We are not seeking to independently litigate the particular allegations of fraud in our brief. This is not our place. We will merely state our belief that the broad scope of the various allegations and irregularities in the subject states merits careful, timely review by the Supreme Court. We'll amen to that. A total of 105 House Republicans joined Johnson in his brief backing Texas case on Thursday, which argued governors, state courts, and election officials usurp the constitutional authority of state legislatures in changing election rules. So that's pretty well the sum total of the lawsuit. As you well know, they're not charging fraud because they can't. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, can't prove that. He's not the one compiling the evidence. There is evidence, but that's not what he's doing. But what he's saying is these 4 swing states and the way they went around by changing the rules at the last hour outside of their constitutionally defined guidelines of how to change election laws, which is to be done through the legislature only, but because they went behind their backs and they did this stuff surreptitiously, they violated their own constitutions. They unfairly changed the rules of the game, and by doing so, they have impacted states that followed the laws and the guidelines and the rules that have been established. And so therefore, what they did was, quote unquote, unconstitutional. Continue here. Johnson says, due to a large part of those usurpations, the election of 2020 has been riddled with an unprecedented number of serious allegations of fraud and irregularities, the Republicans said. Johnson said, Mr. Trump called him Wednesday morning to, quote, express his great appreciation for our efforts to file the brief. And he said, this is President Trump speaking, he said he will be anxiously awaiting the final list to review, Louisiana Republicans said of the president. So what President Trump is asking Johnson is, give me a final list of all the Republican congressmen and women who've signed on to your brief to be part of the lawsuit as a friend of the court. And now, as this news release from CBS News points out, it's 106 Republicans that have signed on, Johnson being the first. So there's 105. Now, as you well know, there's about 205 to 208 Republican Congress people right now who've been reelected as a result of 2020. So that means there's about 101 Republicans that haven't signed on to this brief. Now just stop and think of that. 101 haven't signed on to this brief. Now, why on earth isn't every Republican and all the senators, Republican senators, signing on in defense of what Texas is saying? Because it makes complete logical sense to anybody who is objective. And I'm not saying neutral, because there's no thing as neutrality anymore. The issue are so stark, you can't be neutral and sitting on the fence. If you're sitting on the fence and you're not passionate about this either way, then you're probably not even really a human being. It's impossible to be a centrist and sit on the fence on this issue. You can't be agnostic about either Trump succeeds or Biden succeeds. You've got to pick a side. And I think most people wax and wane to either degree, one way or the other. But the idea that somebody could be neutral in light of what's going on is an impossibility for me to comprehend. But anyways, I digress. So President Trump wants to know. There's about 101 to 103 other Republicans out there who haven't signed on yet. Let me know when the final list is completed, because I want to know where these people are coming from. I want to continue here. Johnson says the purpose of our amicus brief will be to articulate this concern and express our sincere belief that the great importance of this issue merits a full and careful consideration by the court. Well, here, which begs the question, where is the Supreme Court? Now, one might say that they're taking their time with this, and that is a good thing. They're not going to just dismiss it out of hand like a lot of these federal courts did in the various states, who had these cases come before them, these cases of fraud, and just dismiss them out of hand on issues of process, not even reviewing the evidence. You know, you've heard about all these cases that have been dismissed or have lost. And in most cases, they were dismissed not on the actual evidence that was presented, because in most cases, the judges refused to even listen. This was clearly the case with the Georgia federal court that was reviewing Sidney Powell's latest case of election fraud and the Dominion machines. And the judge there just dismissed her case outright without even reviewing the evidence. He made up his mind, he wasn't interested, and basically came down on a process issue. She violated the process. She didn't file the claim properly. I don't know exactly what the details were, but I know that much. It's dismissed it. And so here Johnson's saying, you know, we want you to carefully review it, and okay, maybe that's what's happening. I mean, they've had the Texas case since Monday, and they've had time to review, and the defendants have responded, filing their own briefs as of yesterday, and I would assume that the Supreme Court is reviewing it. Are we correct to assume that they're reviewing this? Or have they already made up their mind? Don't know, question mark. Let's continue here. One House Republican, Congressman Chip Roy of Texas. Now, you gotta love this. Listen to this. Congressman Chip Roy of Texas publicly denounced the effort and said he would not participate, calling the case, quote, a dangerous violation of federalism and sets a precedent to have one state asking federal courts to police the voting procedures of other states, end quote. Now, you gotta love this, right? You just gotta love this. And you know that this left-wing media is just so happy to find that one or two useful Republican, I call them useful idiots, right? Because they want to come across as principled, right? And notice the principle here is the dangerous precedent, this quote unquote, a dangerous violation of federalism. See, he's a guardian of federalism. And the federalism means that no state has the right to usurp the rules and the will of each individual state process and legislature and how they go about doing it. That's for Texas. You do your thing, and you let Pennsylvania do their thing, and that's the principle of federalism, right? And if we get the Supreme Court to get involved, well, we're throwing the whole thing out, the baby with the bathwater. Well. You know, he reminds me of one of these principled Republicans, and there's so many of them, right? They're basically so principled they're of no value, no practical. You ever heard the phrase "he's so heavenly minded, he's of no earthly use"? It's the same kind of idea. So in other words, they like to hide behind the principle. In his case, the principle of federalism, and it sounds right. But in reality, the very issue he's concerned about, federalism, is exactly what Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, is talking about. And that is when a particular state does something to violate the compact that binds all of the states together, which is in general the full-fledged U.S. Constitution. And part of that is that they agree that they will conduct their affairs within their own jurisdiction according to their own constitution, okay? So, but when they violate their own rules in order to change the result of an election at the last minute, you know, by introducing new rules to the game, so to speak, when we've all agreed in general that we would abide by what was established, what has been written, what was passed in the legislature, because that that reflects the will of the people of each individual state. So when the will of the people, which is reflected in their legislatures, and the legislatures are comprised of congressmen and congresswomen to the state house, who draft bills, right? And then they get passed in their state senate, and however they do business. When the process is done that way, then we all can agree that, okay, the Congress, the state Congress or the state house, pardon me, is abiding by the will of their own people. Okay, we can live with that. But when you have people like an attorney general or like a governor or like a secretary of state or like county board election officials suddenly change the rules of the game without first having received approval from the state legislature, then you're not abiding by the Constitution. And what you're doing, in fact, implicates all of the various states, right? And it has an impact on every state. And therefore, they're the ones violating federalism, not the fact that we as Texans, or as in the case of Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, is coming forward and saying, hey, wait a minute, I want remedy. What they've done is wrong. And it has an implication for us because now it nullifies what we've done because we followed our own state rules in this compact called United States of America. And we followed our state legislature and the rules of our own state constitution, which is also undergirded by the U.S. Constitution. We followed that. They haven't. So we're simply coming to the Supreme Court for remedy for what they've done. They've broken faith with us. They're the ones violating federalism. Now, why this Congressman Chip Roy of Texas doesn't see that, actually, I think he does see it. Again, he's one of these useful rhino Republicans. I don't know if he's really a conservative, but if he is, he's of no use to you. He, like Mitt Romney and so many of these other rhino Republicans, like to dress themselves up in the garb of conservatism. And then they like to cry out and cry foul whenever someone actually shows courage and gumption to take the fight to the streets in order to defend general constitutional federalism. And that's what we're seeing here. Again, let me just quote this. One House Republican Congressman Chip Roy of Texas publicly denounced the effort and said he would not participate, calling the case a, quote, dangerous violation of federalism and sets a precedent to have one state asking federal courts to police the voting procedures of other states. Quote, I cannot support an effort that will almost certainly fail on grounds of standing and is inconsistent with my beliefs about protecting Texas sovereignty from the meddling of other states. Well, if you don't want other states to meddle in your affairs, then follow your Constitution. Follow the guidelines and procedures you've put in place legally, and there'd be no reason to be concerned about some state just roughshod running right over you and doing what they want to do. The reason Texas is crying foul here isn't because Pennsylvania or Georgia or Michigan or Wisconsin did things according to the letter of the law, did things according to the letter of their state constitution. It's because they violated them. Okay, get it? They violated them. And in violating their own constitution, they in fact violate federalism, which is apparently the principle you're so concerned to guard. I want to finish this article. Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, filed his lawsuit directly with the Supreme Court on Monday, alleging officials in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan unlawfully changed their voting laws, leading to election irregularities and skewing the results of the election. Now, I'm sorry. The fact that these four states did that, we can't just turn a blind eye to that and go, oh, well, that's okay if they want to do that. If they want to violate their own laws, who cares? Let's just be agnostic. It doesn't have any practical impact on my life here in Texas or here out in Oregon or here out in Montana. Well, excuse me, it does, doesn't it, right? Because of what they did, we have now potentially a complete moron sitting in the bylines, waiting to become the next president of the United States, and that will forever change the makeup of America from a free, capitalistic Christian society. Okay, albeit imperfect, because it's not a perfect Christian society, not a perfect capitalist society, not perfectly free society. But it'll change it from that to a socialist, left-wing, Marxist, radical, anti-God, anti-anything that's traditional and moral, okay? So you got to ask yourself, these Republicans, like this guy here and this next guy here, let's just move down here. There's another one. There's a senator, yes, Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas. Now, I find this a little surprising. Texas told reporters Wednesday the lawsuit was unprecedented. Well, of course, this is the first time it's happened. I mean, what has that got to do with anything? And expressed skepticism the attempt by his state's attorney general would be successful. Well, thank you. Maybe, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? Quote, states handle their own election laws and voting, and you can't make claims of constitutionality in that state lawsuit. But I've never seen something like this, he said, so I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do. Well, duh. Who does? I mean, can you divine the intent and thoughts of the Supreme Court justices, the 9 of them? I mean, so far they've been silent, haven't they? They have not let on. Notice here, GOP Senator Mitt Romney of Utah called the effort, quote unquote, simply madness. Well, of course he would think it's madness because he hates Trump. Frankly, this man, Mitt Romney, hates America. I'm going to say that because the fact that he fights the way he does, tooth and nail against the president, against the will of the people, and then most often than not, his consternation and his finger wagging at the president has very little to do with actual principles other than he doesn't like the president's demeanor. He doesn't like the way the president speaks. He doesn't like the apparent unpresidential appearance of the president for the most part. Most of everything that Mitt Romney has a problem with Trump on the level is fluff. It's style, not substance. But anyways, I guess the good thing that we can get out of this is that there's at least 17 states that have some sense of reasonableness and are concerned about the affairs of America. And a group of attorney generals from 17 states filed their own friend of the court briefing in support of Texas, while the president filed a motion with the Supreme Court asking to join the case. 6 more states, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, Utah, requested Thursday to join Texas in the case, while the state of Ohio told the Supreme Court it does not support Paxton's proposed relief. I don't quite get that, what the deal is with Ohio. Other than I think that in Ohio, the Ohio Republican Party is full of rhinos. Anyways, I wanted to read this excerpt from CBS News, not because I like CBS's news bent on things, but I think it gives you a sense of where we're at. And that is, it's controversial to Republicans to stand up and fight the process that's going to lead to the theft of the 2020 election. And I think look, on the positive side, you got courage with the state of Texas and the attorney general there, Ken Paxton. Okay, so that's great. Thumbs up there. You got 106 Republicans led by Johnson from Louisiana who are supporting this lawsuit. Thumbs up there. So the grassroots of the Republican Party are great. But then you have the establishment, which consistently does everything it can in its power to oppose what is in the best interest of America. And you really, really have to ask yourself, why on earth anybody would vote for the Republican Party knowing that at least half of these Congress people still are sitting on the fence and are agnostic about what happened in 2020. In fact, the last I heard, there were two Republican Congress people who have refused to acknowledge Joe Biden as vice president-elect, but there's 25 that have, and the rest are sitting by waiting to find out what to do. I bring that to your attention only to say, many of us on the conservative side think that if this goes to the Supreme Court, this should be a shoe-in because we've got, 5 conservative justices on the Supreme Court? You really think that the justices in the Supreme Court are above this kind of political shenanigans? No, I mean that. You've got Thomas there, apparently a real great principled conservative. You've got a bunch of those guys, but I don't know. I've been hearing rumblings that they don't want to take this case. They don't want anything to do with this. Well, too bad. It's there, and you 5 Supreme Court justices who are conservative, it's within your hands right now to save your country. Does it mean there aren't going to be rumblings? Of course there will be. Does it mean it's not going to be difficult? Of course it will be. Does it mean that you personally not find yourself in a whole lot of hot water with the radical left and all of the people on the Democrat side who would love to do nothing but harm? Of course. But now's the time for you to providentially step into the gap and potentially save this federalism known as the United States of America and protect the people from what inevitably will be a socialist takeover of America. Do you really want to sit on the fence knowing what is at the gates looking to take you over? Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to be silent? Is it really this difficult for you to rule on this issue? I don't know. I wish I was a fly on the wall at the Supreme Court. I wish I could tell you exactly what's going on and what they're thinking so I could report it beforehand. That would probably escalate my views and make me an individual beyond just a talking, bobbling head here. But I don't know. Is it good that they're taking time? I guess. Does it make you feel better that there's been so much silence? I don't know. Does it bother you that there are that many Republicans in Congress that are unwilling or have not signed on to this brief? It should. It should, ladies and gentlemen, it should. It should. We need to clean house. And regardless of what the Supreme Court does, I think each and every one of us has to ask a very defining question of our own lives and character. And that is, are we willing to live in a world where liberty is so cheap, and we just take it for granted, and if someone takes it from us, we just willingly concede without a real fight? I don't know. It's a really important question to ask yourself. Take a look at your kids tonight. Take a look at the house you have, or whatever it is you do, and ask yourself that question. What does this all mean? Now, I'm kind of rambling here, and that's exactly what I didn't want to do. But I guess for me, being a man of faith, at the end of the day, I always say to myself, you know what? There's a reason why in the Bible it says, do not put your trust in princes, because princes and kings will let you down. So will earthly judges. And in the end, everything that we have, even our body and our possessions, we can't take them with us. We're going to die. None of this will come with us. So as important as it is to fight and defend these wonderful things that have been given to us by previous generations, if it gets stolen from us and if it's taken from us by force and there's nothing that we can really do to defend ourselves, at the end, you can take solace in the fact that there is real justice. And the justice of God cannot be corrupted. He can't be bought off. He doesn't sit on the fence. He's not agnostic to the things that are going on. He's not corrupt. He's just. He will vindicate the truth. He will defend the victim, and he will punish all wrongdoers. And for those of you who hold positions of authority right now, and you're using that position to enrich yourselves, and you are being deceitful, and you are being a coward, just remember this. You might get away with it right now, but in the long term, you're going to meet your maker just like I'm going to meet my maker. And because you have a position of authority, judgment will be meted out to you in a far more serious way if you have not made good and made peace with your Creator God. Chances are, if you are a greedy politician, money grubbing, and if you are easily bought off, and if you are deceitfully political, chances are you don't really care at all about what I'm saying, and you're just going to continue doing what you do until one day when your life is forfeit and you die, and you'll be standing before the judge of all judges, and he can't be bought off. And he's not a coward, and it's not going to take time for him. He doesn't need to take time to deliberate the state of affairs for you. And he will hold you in far higher responsibility because you actually hold office and your actions implicated and impacted the lives of all the people you swore to serve. So do I take comfort in knowing justice will prevail? In a sense, I do, which is why we should always remind ourselves, while we have a right to defend ourselves, while we have the right to defend our nation, we need to be careful that we don't have a vengeful spirit, especially with those cutthroat, treasonous Republicans that sit on the fence. I think those are the people that I despise the most. Even them, they need mercy. Anyways, I've been rambling here. It's the very thing I promised I wouldn't do. Hey, like I said, if you like what I'm doing, let me know. If you don't, okay. So be it. Please, if you do like what I'm doing, consider listening to my music. Check out the links to my songs and let me know, okay? Take care and keep the faith.